All right, comic review time, and this time it's a substantial amount. I waited for reasons I will not get into. I did wait. Sorry, all this. I'm trying to get the. It didn't seem level. It seemed like it was a bit higher than normal. So I was trying to move the blanket, and then of course it made it all topsy turvy. For reasons I want to get into, there are more comics this time than there would be in ordinary circumstances. But nice stack here, so a satisfying comic review for me. So what do I mean by that? Well, I mean, like, I don't like going over four. I kind of hate going over four comics. I mean, sometimes I have to. Like, one of them will be due soon, and I finished the other three, so may as well return four and not one. That's kind of how it would happen sometimes. But then you get like 6 or 7. 6, 7. I did not mean to do that, by the way. That was not intended, and that was not intentional. Like 8 or 8, 10 comics is perfect. I think it's the best amount because it's not just like a 5-minute video. You know, they stretched to 10 minutes. It took a little bit longer about some of the books. But without further ado, let's get into it. Or I have a super long intro. Pantomime by Christopher Sabala. First of all, why they decided to publish this in even smaller than digest-sized graphic novel format, I don't know. The original issues, I don't think are the size. Although when I was going over them, so I was looking at where each issue started to make sure that, because it does do this for each chapter. I wanted to make sure that chapter 2 started where issue 2 started. And when I was going through the sample on the Kindle, it was formatted kind of strangely. Now, it's also around the update time. They updated the way they do samples now. They used to be able to swipe, and it would be different than how it is now. Hard to explain without showing you, but it's different now. Those of you who read comics, like do samples like I do, because you want to know where the issue starts, doesn't tell you on the actual book itself, which I know is confusing to some of you who are not into comics, but some comics, instead of being like chapter 1, will just be this. And you would flipping through it, like, where is chapter 2? And it turns out they put all the covers in the back. A lot of Image Comics Skybound comics put all the covers on the back, and no, I don't know why they do that. It's a really annoying thing, and thank God 9 out of 10 books are on the Kindle, so all I have to do to know where one issue starts and next begins is just read the sample and go like, okay, look for the pages that looks like this, and I find it like, okay, this is where chapter 3 starts. They really tried with that. I'm glad I decided to use my brain. But anyways, going back to the book itself, Pantomime is by Christopher Sabala, and Christopher Sabala I have very mixed feelings of, and not to insult the guy too much, but even his highs are only a little bit high. Like, this is one of his better books, but even now, even here, like, if it was written by anybody else, I would consider it to be like a 6 out of 10 or a 5 out of 10. But with Christopher Sabala, I think of it as being a bit higher of a score, just because he publishes comics that aren't spectacular. Dirtbag Rapture, I remember hating. For some reason, I loved it the first time. Then the second time, I absolutely hated it, could barely get through it. I don't know if I've read it for a third time. But then Welcome Back, I thought was pretty damn decent. I was glad to finally finish that series. The library had Volume 1. They didn't have Volume 2, a 2-volume series. So I had to find Volume 2 elsewhere. And I think you guys know what I mean by that. And then Godfell I really liked. And then this one, I consider to be below Godfell, but above Welcome Back. It's the second best Christopher Sabala book that I've read, that I can think of. I feel like there's a couple more that I've read. Oh, Evolution. Evolution was co-written by other authors. There's 4 authors all together for one series, Christopher Sabala being one of those 4 writers. And that I thought was also pretty good. But honestly, I would say it goes Godfell, Evolution, Pantomime, Welcome Back, and Dirtbag Rapture. That's the order of... That's the ranking for my Christopher Sabala books that I've read thus far. But Pantomime is good. You know, I definitely think it had stakes, and it was written well enough. But it has that feeling of modern comic writer. You know, kind of borderline SJW comic book writer. Kind of 2018 comic book writer. It has that feel, but it does show an evolution, for no pun intended, an evolution past that way of writing. There's no like there's a they them there's a they them character, but it's like just thrown out there. They make no big deal about it. There's a gay character. They don't make a big deal about that either. They just exist. I think it's the best way to write those characters. They're not written abnormally different than everybody else. But the biggest drawback here is the pacing. There's a lot of dialogue they could have trimmed or otherwise removed from this comic that would make the pacing a lot smoother. As is, it's a decent comic, like a 6.5 out of 10. I liked reading it. I liked. I wanted to finish it. I want to see where it all ended, and some things were not as predictable. There was some little plot twists and turns here that I didn't see coming, but they weren't like. But in this, I think is really telling, and this will kind of all sum it up my feelings into one point, is that when these twists and turns happened, I feel like it should have been more of a shock to my system than it actually was. But 6.5 out of 10. A decent book. If you also find it at your local library, I would definitely suggest picking it up. But and especially if they have the issues themselves at like a local comic shop for $1 a pop, definitely pick those up. Once in Future, so this is a ongoing series, meaning there's more than one volume. This is not all in one. 30 issues total. But so far, it is really damn good. Now, I have read this before. The first volume I read before. Currently on the second volume, so I'm now into issues I've not read thus far. So I think this is a review as the first 11 issues of Once in Future. It's pretty damn good. Another Kieran Gillen home run. 8 out of 10 thus far. I like to be quick with books that I've not finished. You know, if I'm reviewing a 4-volume series and I'm only showing off volumes 1 and 2, I like to be kind of a quick review, and then when I finish the series, I'll give a longer review afterwards. Ghosted Volume 4. Now, Ghosted is that series. This is written by Joshua Williamson. And Joshua Williamson, his Dark Ride was amazing. I obviously loved the hell out of that. Night Terrors I also enjoyed. Deathbed I was kind of in the middle about. And this one I'm also kind of in the middle of. However, each time I read it, I like it a little bit more. But by the end, I'm kind of glad to be over and I'm glad to have finished it. You know, like thank God it's over. But saying thank God it's over is giving it a bit too much shit for what, you know, and it's a bit too over exaggerated. Ghosted it's decent enough, but it really does feel like it's the writer's one of the writer's first outings. Like you can tell this was written a while ago, and Joshua Williamson has ironed out the kinks, as it were. It's 20 issues, and I would say by the 15th issue I was getting kind of tired of it. It's not awful by any stretch of the imagination or any stretch of the word, but it's also not fantastic either. 7 out of 10. I do still recommend it, though. But when I say I was tired of it, I don't mean like I was like really pushing myself to read each issue and it was an absolute chore to get through. I more mean that it would come up and I'd be like, oh yeah, Ghosted again. All right, let's read this now. And I wasn't as excited to read it as I was most of the other books I was reading at that time. But it was never a chore for me to read Ghosted, especially this time around. And again, I would say that it has improved. Like, but before I give it a 6 out of 10, now I'm giving it a 7 out of 10. The Midnight Show is written by Cullen Bunn, and I hate to say it, but this is a Cullen Bunn series that I kind of hated. Cullen Bunn has this writing style that I really enjoy. It's gonna turn off a lot of readers. Readers that don't like the more confusing way of writing, the kind of Grant Morrison-y kind of way of writing. It's kind of like weird for the sake of weird and doesn't always make sense, but it's still absolutely entertaining for me. This feels like it was either editorial was on his ass and there's a lot of edits he was forced to make, or it was just Cullen Bunn just throwing it out there. Maybe, I don't know, it just did not feel like Cullen Bunn. This felt like a just standard horror graphic novel. Now, one major plus I'm going to give it is the love for classic Universal monsters. That's definitely apparent in here throughout every page. When they show up, when the characters are talking about the characters. Now there are some characters here I don't think are based off of Universal monsters. You have Dracula, but then you have what looks like the creature from the Black Lagoon almost, but it isn't. And then there's the Wolfman. The Wolfman does exist in he's a Universal monster character. And I believe there's Frankenstein too. I could be wrong, but I think Frankenstein was in here too. But all in all, this is very disappointing and very standard, very predictable. There was no surprises here. There was nothing here to grab onto. No substance whatsoever. It was the Diet Coke of horror graphic novels, and not even Diet Coke of Cullen Bunn. It was like the Diet Coke of Cullen Bunn's writing. 3 out of 10. Not recommend. It's only Teenage Wasteland. What's funny is that whenever I see this book, I'd always have the song Teenage Wasteland stuck in my head. Just a few days ago, I found out, they actually do sing It's Only Teenage Wasteland. So it's literally that. Now, each issue, like, it's literally, they knew what they were doing kind of thing. Now, each issue comes with a QR code, which I found out that you can do it through the iPad, like through the camera of the iPad. You can do it through, like, right here. If you guys take out your phone camera and you point it towards this QR code, even though this is filmed, you can still use the QR code. It'll still work. And you'll see, if you actually are doing it right now, that each chapter comes with its own Spotify or Apple Music playlist for the songs that they should play while you're reading the book. Now, I didn't do that. All the songs, except for the last song, of course, except for this song, they're all seem to be grungy, not my kind of music, like even further than my type of music. So I didn't check out any of those. However, this comic should not be missed. This is a really damn good comic. I've read this twice now, and I think I liked it even more the second time. An absolute masterpiece from Kurt Pyers. I can not wait until the sequel comes out, there's no news on a sequel, which is a shame. You know, instead of making two ongoing series from Image Comics, maybe do the fucking sequel to It's Only Teenage Wasteland. I say to Kurt Pyers, who's totally watching this. 9 out of 10 for Only Teenage Wasteland. Honestly, sometimes all I need to say is it's a knockout, check it out, it's really damn good kind of thing. And no more needs to be said. There's not even a whole lot of downsides. Like, I honestly don't have any little downsides to that book. So yeah, 9 out of 10. Star Wars Shattered Empire is another fantastic example of you can make new Star Wars material and make it actually interesting. And it can add to the legacy of these characters and also feature new characters that aren't wooden and boring. And you can also not make it not make it feel like you're making up as you're going along, and you found out they're making up as they go along, and you're like, yeah, no shit, you were doing that. This is everything that the sequel trilogy should have been writing-wise. Story-wise, no, because this is different than the sequel trilogy. The sequel trilogy takes place years after the events of this comic, even this comic does. However, the writing itself should have been utilized in the sequel trilogy. That's utilized here. A really damn good Star Wars comic. If you like Star Wars, you'll like this. 8 out of 10. Osborn Evil Incarcerated. This one, the best way to describe this is it screams late 2000s Marvel. Late 2000s, early 2010s Marvel. It has that writing style that was very apparent back in the day. It's hard to explain what I mean other than just saying, read this and read Civil War, and they kind of feel like the same book. They were released around the same time, I mean. It has that writing style that I'm not the biggest fan of. The pacing, I thought, was kind of off. But it is a relatively interesting book. Nothing that's at all to write home about, and it's very, very clear to see why this was half off at my local comic shop. Why I got this for half off at my local comic shop. It kind of feels like a bargain bin book, but a good bargain bin book. 7 out of 10. Yeah, 7.5. Wonder Woman Volume 8: A Twist of Fate. I will die on the hill that Meredith Finch's run on Wonder Woman was a really good run, and it's underrated and underutilized, undervalued. That it's underappreciated too. Now, a follow-up to Brian Azzarello's almost perfect, like near perfect run on Wonder Woman, hell, perfect run on Wonder Woman, is a very, very hard feat to accomplish. We probably could have gotten better than Meredith Finch, but I also think we could have gotten worse than Meredith Finch. And this was around the time that you got the Cameron Stewart and Brendan Fletcher, not Brendan Thomas, Brendan Fletcher run on Batgirl that was absolutely reprehensible, irredeemable trash. That I only kind of like the second time around that I only liked the most recent time that I read it, probably because I remember being a lot worse than it was. But it's still pretty trashy. Like, it's still pretty awful, and it's irredeemable trash compared to Gail Simone's run, which I really do like. And again, I'll die on that hill that Gail Simone's run in Batgirl was really damn good. So to have something like Wonder Woman release and have it be pretty damn decent to really damn good, again, is why I say that Meredith Finch's run on Wonder Woman is underappreciated, and underrated. However, Volume 8 takes a bit of a step back. Kind of, the pacing here is kind of wonky. Like, sometimes it's really good, but sometimes it's, like, really slow pace and not in a good way. And not intentionally so, either. But it's still really damn good. 7.5 out of 10. Like an 8.5 out of 10 overall for her run. Kanto Volume 3 is pretty damn good. One of the weakest volumes so far, but still leaps and bounds above a lot of other comics that were releasing around this time. And definitely one that should not be missed. 8 out of 10. That should go to show just how much I love Kanto, is that the weakest volume I still give a pretty high score to. Batman Hong Kong. More like Batman Hong Yon. This was absolutely atrocious. I regret reading this, honestly. And I'm not getting into why, other than I had to, because I didn't want to read a whole lot the other night when I was reading this, so I had to get through this too, and I was also watching a movie, and I wanted to play some Xbox, I wanted to do this, I didn't want to read all day like I was the past week. So I was like, alright, I'm going to give myself less to read, but also I want to finish up Batman Hong Kong, so I can return it ASAP, because this is a book that I can't renew. It's ILL, the other books I can, but ILL books I cannot renew on myself. I have to email the librarian, and I don't like doing that, but I don't have to. So I decided, you know what, we're going to read Hong Kong as soon as possible. Let's read it today. And I didn't read one issue of The Wicked and Divine, a series that I should have been reading, because I always got to finish that up, because it's a library book too. It's got a compendium. So I decided not to do that. Now, that has nothing to do with however, it has nothing to do with how I like the book in general. However, I do think that, credit where it's due, you could argue that I have a bit more hate for this book, but I wouldn't say that. Like, you could argue that because of... But still, I think that's the case. It's still an awful book. It's still an absolute chore to get through. And that should not be something I say about comics. And this is no exaggeration. When I finish this, I almost want to be done reading comics for the night. I was almost like, you know what, we're done. I'm going to go to bed. This completely drained me. That's how awful Batman Hong Kong was. 2 out of 10. Scalped and Y the Last Man. I'm going to give a quick review, somewhat quick review too. More for Scalped than Y the Last Man, because Y the Last Man is actually the last volume in the series. Scalped is the second volume in the series. For hardcovers, at least. But Scalped and Y the Last Man are both on my top 5, and they will remain on my top 5. Especially Y the Last Man, because it's the last volume in the series. But I feel like Scalped is not going to change. So top 5, obviously they're damn good. Both 10 out of 10s. Scalped is really dark, but it also knows not to be, like, grim dark. And I think it handles its subject matter, like, phenomenally. I really feel like Jason Aaron did his homework and his research on the Indian reservations and the kinds of people living there. Because it's very apparent that he did everything in his power to make it not offensive at all, and not to exaggerate anything at all, and to show it how it is in real life. Now, this isn't based off of any specific characters, any specific people. any specific characters. It's not based off of any specific reservation or any of the people living in it, but it's very apparent that that's how it brings it to light how life is on Indian reservations, and that's a major plus I have to give Jason Aaron. And the stories are just really damn captivating. I was never counting how many pages I had left. I was never bored whatsoever, and this is my 14th time reading Scalp all the way through. All the way through, it's my second time actually, because I keep forgetting why I'm saying and I never get to read it and have them, but pretty much all the way through 14th time in general. There you go. Y: The Last Man. Now, the ending to this, without giving too much away, the ending to Y: The Last Man is very controversial. You either love the ending or you hate the ending. And the first time I read it, I kind of did hate the ending. Did not ruin my overall enjoyment of Y: The Last Man, but I didn't consider it to be a top 5. Top 10, yes, I would put it like a 7 or 8, but it was not top 5. However, my most recent reading of this series, I especially found the ending to work a lot more the more I read it. The more times I reread it, the more I took into consideration, the more I thought about it. I knew what the ending was. So as I'm reading, I'm like, okay, they get more details. And they do set it up pretty well. To be fair, there are a few details here and there as you're reading it that make more and more sense. Like, oh, I didn't notice that the last time around. So it was definitely not an ending that Brian K. Vaughan, the writer of this series, pulled out of his ass. It was an ending he definitely had in mind as he was writing Y: The Last Man. And that is something I give major props to. If you're going to have a controversial ending, you might as well have it figured out as you're going along and more figured out. So by the time you get to it, at issue it was 58, I think it's when, no, 59? 58. 58 is when, out of 60, is when the controversial ending is like, it's a kind of twist. And then once that comes out, then, to have 57 issues of setup is beneficial. And I like how none of the setup was too obvious. Like, someone who knows their way around narratives, like, oh, is that guy's going to end? Like, it's not totally predictable. It's a few throwaway lines here and there, and then one more, definitely one time where it's definitely, made apparent that something's up. But I think the ending works overall. And the whole entire series, again, my most recent reread, I like this a lot more than I ever have before. Maybe even the first time around I read it. 10 out of 10, an absolute phenomenal book, an absolute triumph in the graphic novel medium. Do not miss out on Y: The Last Man. Civil War by Mark Millar. This is a very controversial series, but I still enjoy it. I still enjoy it. I don't think it's bad at all. It is definitely ham-fisted, and it definitely is over the top here and there, and I definitely understand the criticisms. They just don't bother me as much as they do everyone else. 7 out of 10. Wait, no, 7 out of 10. Sorry, 8 out of 10 for Civil War. X-Men Worlds Apart. The last time I read this, I didn't really like it. The first time I read it was a long time ago, and I remember liking it enough. But this time around, it's closer to the first time around. I think the second time around, I guess I thought it was maybe more fast-paced, more action-packed. I don't know. But this time around, I really liked it. It's a decent X-Men book. Now, do you need to read this? Is this going to be beneficial to the X-Men reading order? Absolutely not. It's just a nice little mini-series, nice quick read for X-Men fans, and for Storm fans especially. 7 out of 10. A decent read. And that, as I say, is that.